Good evening to one and all. Welcome you all to the Daily Indian Express newspaper analysis for the date 30th December 2023, brought to you by Ganesh IAS Academy. Okay, let's get into the today's newspaper analysis. Mentioned here are the list of articles which we are going to have the analysis in the upcoming slides. So have a look at it. Okay, let's look into further analysis of the news. So the first news is ULFA peace accord, history of its 44-year-long insurgency as well as peace talk. Recently, a tripartite agreement has been signed between Assam government, central government as well as the ULFA insurgent, which is the Assam-based insurgent group. So that is what the news is about. Let's look into the further details of the news. So how the news is related to examination is, under prelims it is related to current events of national and as well as international importance. Similarly, under mains it is related to GS paper 3 internal security through a subtopic called linkage between development and spread of extremism. So this is how the news has been related to prelims as well as mains. Okay, let's look into the details of the news. So the pro-talk faction of ULFA, that is the United Liberation Front of Assam, was signed between, as I said, between the state government, that is Assam government, central government, as well as the that is the insurgent group, and it was established in 1979. Okay, let's look into what is the roots in this Assamese anxieties, as a result of which only the ULFA organization has been formed. So the Assamese people have their own unique culture, heritage, as well as strong sense of identity, and from 19th century, from 19th century itself, this region saw influx of more number of migrants due to tea, coal, as well as oil economy, and this influx was exacerbated by the partition as well as the subsequent exodus of refugee into the state from the erstwhile East Pakistan. So because of the influx of more number of migrants, because of these reasons have led to competition for the resources, extreme competition for the resources, as a result of which those native peoples have to fight for the scarce resources that is available to them with the outsiders, which in turn has resulted in 6 years long massive movement, and eventually in 1985 an Assam Accord was signed. Even though the Assam Accord was signed, during that movement, this ULFA organization was formed in 1979 under the leadership of Bhimaganda Buragohin, Arabinda Rajkuar, as well as Anup Chetia, Pradeep Gogai, etc. So through their leadership only the organization has been formed. So this is what the root cause of the formation of this organization. Secondly, after the formation of organization, there has been 4 decades of conflict. Thus the ULFA wanted to establish a sovereign Assamese nation through armed struggle against the Indian state. This conflict continued for 4 decades, and in turn Government of India during 1990 has launched the Operation Bajrang, which led to arrest of nearly 1221 ULFA insurgents, and Assam was announced disturbed area, as well as a result of which a president rule was imposed and the AFSPA was invoked. So this is how the response by the government has been through the conflict times. So during 1992, again one faction later, which has been renamed as Surrender ULFA. So in short form it is called as S ULFA. The S stands for surrender. The faction within the ULFA was ready to talk with the government and to settle the things, but there are other factions which doesn't want to compromise with the government. They want to carry out the armed struggle to achieve their goal of independent Assam state. So this S ULFA carried out secret killings against the other faction of the ULFA members on behalf of the state government, and then ULFA Despite all this effort by the government, the ULFA survived because of the help from outside the states. Like in the case of, they are having connection with the Pakistan as well as the Myanmar military, and then Chinese government, so on and so forth. ULFAS has camp in Myanmar, and these camps act as the launch pad for the cross-border operation. So this is what the conflict has been for the past 4 decades, and then ULFA has links to other insurgents outfit in the northeast as well as Myanmar, as well as the Islamic terror outfit like Harkarat-ul Jihad Islami as well as the Al-Qaeda. And this is what the conflict has been for the past 4 decades. And so after conflict, how they have been turned towards the peace processes. During 2005, the ULFA formed an 11-member people consultative group comprising which comprised noted intellectuals, and then the committee has been mediated round of talks, but it doesn't reach any fruitful result. The ULFA walked out of the discussion, and after the walking out of the discussion, they unleashed new way of terror. And some ULFA commenters like Arvinda Rajkova from 2008 onwards would again strive for the peace talks with the government. However, there are another leader called Paresh Barua was adamant in his goal of achieving the separate or independent Assam state. So there was a fight between the two leaders itself. So as a result of which Arvinda Rajkova was expelled from the ULFA organization, but majority of the people also sided with the Arvinda Rajkova, that is those who wanted to have the talks with the government. And then as a result of which the Rajkova led pro-talk has been expelled from it, and the negotiation between the government as well as this faction contributed the most amount of the more number of people from the ULFA organization. So as a result of which the peace talk has been going on since 2012, and during the 2012 peace talk, that faction has submitted a 12-point charter of demand to the central government. This 12-point of charter has been debated as well as discussed between the central government, state government as well as this organization, and finally right now an accord has been peace accord has been signed. But what the some experts are saying is that it has been signed by only certain members of the ULFA organization only, and other members, other leaders who wanted the separate Assami state doesn't signed this accord. But what the other experts are saying is that this peace accord is the step in the direction of achieving the complete peace accord. So this is what the news is about, the details of the accord is about. So what need to be studied further is, we should be aware of the northeastern maps, complete northeastern maps, and its border with the other state governments, other international countries, like in the case of Bangladesh, China, Bhutan as well as Myanmar. And then we should also be aware of what is Assam Rifle, their structure, and which are all the borders they are manning. Thirdly, we should also be aware of the Myanmar junta, which has been taken place recently, and what is the possible cause for it, and what is the ongoing thing in the Myanmar junta. We should be aware of it. So these are all the things which we need to be further aware of, and with this we have reached the end of today's this topic. Amit Shah, who is the Minister for Cooperatives, what he has said is that cooperatives should open bank accounts with the cooperative bank, so that the drain of the deposit from the cooperative bank to the nationalized banks or the private banks will be stopped. So this is what the news is about. So under prelims, how the news is being related to examination is, under prelims the news is related to economics as well as social development. Similarly under mains it is related to GS paper 3, Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resource growth, development and employment, which comes under GS paper 3. Okay, let's look into the explanation part of the news. So under Union Cooperative Minister, an event was conducted. What the Union Cooperative Minister has asked is, all the cooperatives need to open account with the cooperative banks. This is what the thing is. Why it has been stressed is to prevent the deposits that has been draining or flowing out of the cooperative banks to the nationalized banks or the other private sector banks. And then the Gujarat state cooperatives under the this is the one thing, and Gujarat state cooperative bank under the initiative of central government has launched a pilot project called Banashkanda as well as Panchamahal, a pilot project in the Banashkanda as well as Panchamahal district to persuade the cooperatives in this district to have the bank account in the cooperative banks. So this is what the thing is. Let's look into the cooperative bank. It is the three tier system bank which comprises of primary agriculture credit society at village level as well as central cooperative banks at the district level as well as state cooperative banks at the state levels. So these are all the hierarchies in which the cooperative banks has been organized, as well as the PACs, that is primary agriculture credit society, are outside the purview of the Banking Regulation Act, so though they won't be coming under the regulation of RBI. But the other cooperative banks, that is the other banks which is in the hierarchy, like in the case of District Central Cooperative Bank as well as the State Central Cooperative Bank, are registered under the provision of State Cooperative Society Acts, and which has been regulated by the RBI, and NABARD has been delegated the power to regulate the District Central as well as the State Central Cooperative Bank on behalf of the RBI. So this is what the details of the cooperative banks is about. Okay, let's look into the urban cooperative bank. The primary cooperative banks, also referred to as urban cooperative banks, which caters to the financial needs of customers in urban as well as semi-urban area. And urban cooperative banks are primarily registered as cooperative societies under the provision of either the State Cooperative Society Acts of the state concerned or the Multi-State Cooperative Society Acts 2002, if the area of the operation is more than the one state or more than the 2 or 3 states. And the banking law made applicable to the cooperative societies only in 1996 itself. So we could able to see that the Banking Regulation Act was implemented in 1949, but this Banking Regulation Act was made applicable to the cooperative societies only during 1966. So that is the reason why there is the duality of control on this cooperative banks. Like in the case of the banking related functions are regulated by RBI and the management related functions are regulated by the respective state governments. So this is what the details of the cooperative bank as well as the urban cooperative bank is, and what are the things which we need to be further aware of is we should be aware of what is bank, what is NBFC, and what is the payment bank, its structure, function, as well as the objective under which it has been formed. And with this we have reached the end of this topic. April-November fiscal deficit is at 51% of financial year 24 budget, which is very much lesser than when compared to the same time period of the previous year. So this is what the news is about. So how the news is related to examination is, under prelims it has been related to economic and social development. Similarly under mains it is related to Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resource, growth, development and employment. So okay, let's look into the explanation of the news. The fiscal deficit of the first 8 months of the country has stood at nearly 51% of the budget estimate. Last year it was 58.9%. So the fiscal deficit was reduced mainly because of the base effect, and secondly because of the containment enabled by the expenditure quiz, that is the effort taken by the government to reduce the wasteful expenditure. So the revenue expenditure contracted by 16.1% this year in November, but at the same time the capital expenditure has increased marginally by 1.6%. So this is what the news has been in relation to the fiscal deficit contraction for the past 8 months, this fiscal year. Okay, let's look into what does this fiscal deficit is about. Fiscal deficit is the negative balance that arises whenever a government spends more money than it receives in the form of taxes and then other revenues. It is an indication of total borrowings needed by the government. So this is what the details are, the fiscal deficit is about, and what impacts does it creates in an economy is, it is inflationary in nature. Secondly, it increases the nation debt, and then thirdly, it will reduce the economic production, because the amount of revenue that has been earned by government will be spent to reduce the deficit rather than spending it on the productive investments, like in the case of capital expenditure. And then the high tax will be imposed on the future generation to reduce the fiscal deficit that has arisen in the current generation. And then to reduce the fiscal deficit, the efforts will be taken by the government, that is, they will be borrowing from the banks as well as other financial institutions, which will have the crowding out effect on the private investors, and then it will reduce the overall government ratings by the global ratings, which in turn will impact the government's negotiation efforts with the multilateral banks to borrow the money from them for the capital expenditure development. So what need to be studied further is, we should be aware of what is FRBM Act and what is revenue deficit and what is the fiscal deficit, budgetary deficit, and difference between three of them. So this is what the things which we need to be further aware of, and with this we have reached the end of this topic. November month's core sector growth falls to 6-month low. So this is what the news is. The recently released index of industrial production has led to a fall of 6-month low of the core sector growth. This is what the news is. Okay, let's look into how the news has been related to examination. Under prelims, it is related to economic and social development. Similarly, under mains, it is related to Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resource, growth, development, and employment. So this is what the linkage of news with the examination syllabus. Okay, let's look into the further explanation part of the news. So the 8 core sectors industries fell to 6-month low of 7.8% in November from 12% in October. The reason is due to high base effect. In November month last year, the core sector has grown 5.7% against the 0.7% growth in the October 2022, and the growth the output growth of the coal has been slowed down to 10.9% in November from 18.4%, that is the previous month, and then the electricity growth has crashed to 5.6% from 20.3%, as well as the steel production growth has also been declined to 9.1% from 10.1%. So these three sectors contributes to nearly 48% of the core sector. So the core sector in turn will contribute as a weightage of 40% in index of industrial productions. So what does this index of industrial productions? It is the prime indicator for the economic development, and it measures the trends in the behavior of industrial production over the period of time with reference to the base year. For the base year for which the index of industrial production has been calculated is 2011-12, and it is being computed on the monthly basis, and it is being released by Central Statistical Organization on a monthly basis. So what is the significance of this index of industrial production is, it is the data that has been given released by the index of industrial production will be used by different government agencies to form the policy. Secondly, the decision makings of the private organization or the private investors will be based on this, the output of the industrial index of industrial production output. And thirdly, it is useful to estimate the GDP, which in turn will enable the government to form the budgetary estimate for the next year. So these are all the significance it holds. So let's look into the 8 core sectors which comes under the index of industrial production, and it comprises of nearly 40.2% of weightage which has been included in IIP, and the 8 core sectors in decreasing order of weightage, which is very important from the perspective of prelims, like in the case of refinery products, electricity, steel, coal, crude oil, natural gas, cement, as well as fertilizers. So these are all the core sectors that has been arranged in the decreasing orders. So this is what the details of the core sector is about. Let's look into what are all the things which we needed to be further aware of. Firstly, we should be aware of what is Kisan credit card scheme. Secondly, we should also be aware of what is Make in India, their objectives and the targets that it has set to achieve that objective. Thirdly, we should also be aware of the production link incentive schemes which has been launched to boost the domestic manufacturing in India. So we should be aware of who are all the ministries that has been involved in implementing the scheme, and which are all the sectors that has been included in the scheme, and what is the final objectives that has been expected from the implementation of this scheme. So these are all the things which we needed to be further aware of. So, and with this we have reached the end of this topic. Okay, let's move on to the final part of this today's session, that is the prelims practice question. So mentioned here is the today prelims practice question. So those students, those who are watching this session online, please do comment the option point for the question which you are seeing right now on the board. With this, we have reached the end of today's session. Please do like, comment, share as well as subscribe Ganesh IAS YouTube channel, so that you will be receiving the daily notification with relation to the current affairs and other important current affairs session that will be brought to you in the future by Ganesh IAS Academy. Thank you.